Washington Post for $250 million. Along with Amazon products being made in China's state-owned factories, Bezos wants to expand Amazon's business in China, saying that Amazon is well positioned to serve China. Also, Bezos' connection to the Communist Party is clear in the advertising section of the Washington Post, which includes a supplement called China Watch. China Watch is written by China Daily, the main propaganda outlet for the Communist Party. And in the past few years, they've paid American newspapers, including the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times, nearly $19 million to run the inserts. But that's not the end of it. A recent report from the Department of Justice's Foreign Agent Registration Act revealed scathing information that a group in the U.S. directly linked to the Chinese Communist Party is arranging private dinners and sponsored trips to China for media outlets and top journalists who are selected for effectiveness. The mission is to garner favorable coverage on China, and in turn, hundreds of positive articles on China have been published. Some of those media outlets include ABC, NBC, Associated Press, Reuters, Bloomberg, CNN, CNNBC, MSNBC, The New York Times, Newsweek, NPR, The Huffington Post, The Atlantic, The Financial Times, USA Today, The Economist, Time Magazine, Washington Post, The Wall Street Journal, and the list goes on and on. But what's this have to do with covering up crimes against humanity? Well, for over 20 years, human rights groups like Amnesty International and also the United Nations have reported that Chinese citizens who practice the spiritual discipline of Falun Gong are being demonized, tortured, and killed by their government. In the early 90s, Falun Gong was supported, awarded, and even endorsed by the Communist Party. It taught to live a spiritual life. Practitioners are encouraged to follow traditional values, to tell the truth, to be compassionate and tolerant, to be responsible to their families, and to be hardworking and good people in society. News reports even quoted government officials who stated that Falun Gong dramatically reduced healthcare costs nationwide. However, at that time, the Communist Party leader was Jiang Zemin. He came to power largely by supporting the 1989 Tiananmen Square student massacre. When he found that Falun Gong was not controlled by the state, he viewed its popularity and promotion of spirituality as a threat to the party's control. He stated, "How could the Marxism we endorse and the materialism and atheism we believe in not crush what Falun Gong propagates? If it were true, wouldn't we become laughingstocks? The Communist Party must eliminate Falun Gong." And on July 20th, 1999, he launched a nationwide violent crackdown. In the beginning, mainstream media reported on the mass injustices. Thousands being arrested, people sentenced to 18 years in sham trials, tens of thousands suffering in labor camps, unspeakable cases of sexual torture, psychiatric abuse, young school teachers beaten to death by police, horrific cases of men and women being burned, mutilated, and electrocuted to death. A Wall Street Journal reporter even won a Pulitzer Prize for exposing the mass torture and killings of Falun Gong practitioners, including Miss Chen, a 58-year-old grandmother who police beat to death over 3 days for simply pleading for her freedom to believe. Under orders from the regime that no measures are too excessive to wipe out Falun Gong, she was whipped and beaten with plastic pipes, punched in the face and head, electrocuted with stun guns on her neck. Her ears were swollen black from torture, and all her teeth were broken. She crawled outside her cell, vomited, and died. The reporter stated, "The effects on society of such systematic brutality is hard to gauge. None of the deaths have been reported in the Chinese media." But then, in the 2001 lead-up to the Beijing Olympic bid, reports surfaced on how Jiang Zemin was influencing mainstream media to remain silent to the crimes happening to Falun Gong in China. For example, in 2001, the New York Times publisher flew to China to meet with Jiang Zemin. Days later, NewYorkTimes.com was suddenly unblocked in China. And since then, they've been mostly quiet on the persecution and even published stories attacking Falun Gong. In March 2001, James Murdoch, son of media tycoon Rupert Murdoch, returned from China and stunned attendees at the annual Milken Institute Business Conference by viciously attacking Falun Gong with Communist Party propaganda. In the years that followed, a sample of Associated Press and AFP and Reuters articles showed 75% were spurred by Chinese government sources attacking the group. In 2007, CBC, Canada's national news network, who held the broadcast rights to the 2008 Beijing Olympics, cancelled a scheduled documentary on Falun Gong after pressure from the Chinese embassy. Documentaries on Falun Gong were also quietly killed, by PBS, CNN, and 60 Minutes. In 2015, a Beijing-based New York Times reporter found strong evidence backing experts and tribunal conclusions that prisoners of conscience are being slaughtered in mass numbers for their vital organs by the communist state, where Falun Gong practitioners are possibly the main victim. However, New York Times editors told her not to pursue the story. The picture is quite clear that for fear of losing billions of dollars, mainstream media is being censored by the Communist Party when it comes to their crimes against Falun Gong. Recently, some mainstream media with strong ties to the Communist Party have attacked Falun Gong with religious bigotry and hatred, hauntingly similar to Communist Party propaganda that Falun Gong is political and a danger to society. But is trying to stop the torture and killing of human beings actually considered political? I mean, if your loved ones or friends were being murdered, would you not approach your government for help? For over a quarter century, Falun Gong has been practiced right here and in over 100 countries by millions from different races, and for 20 years against all odds of violent persecution. It's been Falun Gong's peaceful and rational efforts to help save the lives of others that has garnered support from millions who've signed petitions calling for an end to the persecution, and also from government officials worldwide, including 5 unanimously passed bipartisan U.S. Congress resolutions, 10 resolutions passed by European Parliament, and thousands of officials who have issued proclamations and signed statements calling for an end to the persecution. Also, the founder of Falun Gong, Mr. Li Hongzhi, is a 5-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He was nominated by the European Parliament for the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, and he's the recipient of Freedom House's International Religious Freedom Award. These actions should speak volumes about the spirit of Falun Gong's teachings. One of the most powerful weapons of every genocide campaign in history is hate propaganda, lies, and fake news that's used to create indifference towards a targeted group, allowing the atrocities to continue. And for 20 years, the Communist Party has used hate propaganda, lies, and fake news to paint Falun Gong as controversial and something to unmask, while mainstream media has perniciously followed along. But has mainstream media forgotten what the Communist Party truly is? They're responsible for the deaths of over 80 million people. They killed millions during the Cultural Revolution. They killed over 1 million Tibetans. They killed thousands in the Tiananmen Square student massacre. Today they still suppress Tibet. They persecute true Christians, and they are ethnically cleansing the Muslim Uyghurs. And they're attacking innocent Hong Kongers who are standing up for freedom. In 1997, they covered up the bird flu. In 2003, they covered up SARS that killed people worldwide. And in 2020, they covered up COVID for 6 weeks, allowing it to spread and kill millions around the world by lying that it was not transmittable. And today, they still try to hide responsibility for COVID by blaming U.S. soldiers for the virus and by jailing heroes who tried to warn us of the cover-up, like reporter Jiang Zhan, who was just sentenced to 4 years in prison as a troublemaker. This is today's CCP, and it makes you wonder how mainstream media can partner with them and how journalists can believe a thing they say about Falun Gong, or anything for that matter. We then have this guy, high-ranked Chinese embassy official Mr. Chen Yonling, who defected in Australia and exposed the real reason for the continued attack on Falun Gong. He stated, "The Chinese Communist Party has always relied on violence, lies, and advocating atheism to maintain its power. They cannot understand Falun Gong's peaceful efforts to protect their freedom of belief. Now, they can't let the international community know what they've done to Falun Gong in China." For what it's worth, if you want true information on Falun Gong, visit the Falun Gong website under this video, or human rights organizations like Freedom House. And to all mainstream media journalists, no one can deny that the Communist Party's actions against people who practice Falun Gong are so terrible and so evil, they run counter to the proper nature of human beings. To align with good is to help stop these things from happening. To align with evil is to ignore these actions and further promote the suffering of these human beings by demeaning them as something to unmask. Instead, unmask the CCP and help those who are suffering under evil forces, regardless if you understand their spiritual faith or not. Don't make the promotion of evil your contribution to this world. Make the fight for good and justice your core value, because the universe keeps score, and the ultimate cost of ignorance or malice isn't worth it. I'm Joel Chipkar. See you next time.